it'll take way longer to do that with 20 people than just like three of us doing it. But charging a workshop fee and getting to educate people and bring them onto the space, like it's something we want to do to be more inclusive for the community, but then also then the space itself is almost becoming more of a product that we're selling, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. I wanted you to articulate that for the whole group and for the recording is just that the farm is a product too. So I'm glad you touched on that. Thanks. Is there
It's
anything else?
very like very alive, like just in this day and the last week that we've been like shifting that perspective. Um, because literally we have people wanting to walk onto the farm all the time and we have to kind of like shoo people away and say we're a working farm. We do tours on the weekends, but kind of trying to shift that, like how we view our own space.
Mm-hmm. Rachel?
Yeah, hi everybody. Nice to meet you, Hannah and Sienna, and to see the rest of you again. Yeah, I am interested in exploring what I want to do with a flower business with a bunch of flower bulbs that I inherited, I guess, and whether or not that is a business, and then also my passion for growing vegetables and more edible crops. And I think that the market channel I'd be most interested in learning more about and exploring is like an on-farm stand. And uh, second, like some curiosities around agritourism and what that would look like here. Yeah, I'll pass it to Jess and Corey.
Sorry, we jumped on a little bit late. Are we just kind of
Yeah. Introducing ourselves and kind of going off of like what market channels and streams are we kind of like most interested in exploring today?
cool? So I'm Jess, this is Corey, and we are interested in exploring like direct to others, like farm shop outlets, I guess would be our main, like instead of farmers markets or like selling from our farm directly is to sell at other farm shops and create a product that's like fermentation based. So we would use local produce um, grown as close to here as we can. We're in Julian. So sourcing from other small farms and yeah, just focusing on like the end product instead of trying to do it all ourselves.
What do you grow, Jess? And like how big is your farm?
We don't grow any food right now. We just have lavender growing. We have 9 acres up here that we caretake, so it's not really ours, but it's really hard to grow things up here.
Yeah.
So that would be really complicated for us to depend on growing all of our produce.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So we want to really kind of focus more, especially because fermentation traditionally has been like a way to use food waste and prevent food waste at like the end of seasons to preserve things, to kind of like help other farmers who are doing the growing in places maybe like Ramona or closer to the coast that are easier to grow in abundance.
Yeah.
Not to say that won't change in the future. We're also kind of exploring like the Miko kitchen, like the
Oh, cool.
micro kitchen aspect. Yeah, Kat, I know we were talking about that a little bit, and I talked to Hannah over at Food System Alliance last week, and yeah, it's an interesting program. It would be a different direction than the fermentation products. I think that would be like an evolution, but kind of in the same vein, Rachel and Sienna, that you were saying as like a agro-tourism thing. That would be cool to layer in to our site and have people here to eat and like kind of do more like farm to table. But I think that's another chapter.
Awesome. Okay, this is all really juicy. Good stuff. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Yes. I do that by sharing. too. Perfect. Yay. I did pop in the chat a link for a Miro board. So we're not going to hop on this right now, but if you are wanting to populate here, if you like being electronic, this is like a group posties. I'm going to be taking notes here, but if you are like, oh, I want to be adding posties and add to the group one, this is here for you all. It's mostly a tool and an outcome that I'm really excited to be building on, but for you all, and when I do this, I'm doing it on pen and paper and like a whiteboard and like taking pictures if it's on a whiteboard and like, at Be Worthy, we've done this every year. So this is going to be our 4th year doing a pros and cons list. And as much as we think like, oh yeah, this is it, but our business has changed so much, especially early on. So I love doing these pros and cons list regularly. It's a really wonderful way, especially in a team environment, to get everyone's ideas heard and captured so that like I've seen tensions be resolved in places that in other farms I've done this with by just being like, yep, see, it's here, it's on, it's listed as a con. Yep, we know it's a con. Yes, yep, it's a con, because we can get really stuck on why is this not working? And I really want this, and I'm trying to advocate for this idea. And that's where really fleshing out this, like, it's such a basic tool, right? Pros and cons list, but it's a foundation for us to get all the thoughts out and hold it for next year. Because really what this is going to be growing into for our next session that we're doing next week is we're fleshing out all of our ideas. And then we're going to kind of really start to like rate these in the next class. So we have a matrix, and I'm going to be timing you, and I'm going to give you numbers and be like, how joyful of a task is this for you? And your instinct is what that first number is. And then these get ranked. And so what we want to be doing today so that process is really clean and instinctual is do this background brainstorming. And I have this here is like our product, like a product matrix. This is for Be Worthy Farms, and I think it's a good fit for this group here that's on right now because we're talking about agritourism and these other little pieces that kind of filter in. Because how we can sell these products and stack them, like, why are you at the farmers market, Sienna? Like, trying to think of what products are you trying to sell there, or is this like a marketing tool because you're trying to like increase awareness, or you're really trying to move some produce. So and what are you selling? You're selling produce there, but are you also bringing some of Jenny's products or your t-shirts? So this matrix kind of helps us think of like, what are our products and where can they go on a bigger scale, and figuring out those like nuts and bolts later, So yeah, because Be Worthy wanted to do all of these things right away, and that's just not possible when we are starting our farms. And in the early stages, we have to start with little few things, and then we grow from there. But what's fun about this activity is we get to put all of our ideas out. None of them get canceled. It's all here. And now we're looking at our products, where they can go, and we can kind of group them together. So something that like we really were like thinking about was specifically these on-farm experiences, and they're coupled with value-added products. And so they're both two different enterprises requiring different systems and processes and functionality, but they really stack on top of each other, right? Someone's going to come to the farm, and now if I have a value-added product, they're going to spend extra money and that at the farm. And that's been an experience that I've had, and it's amazing how many people want to buy your t-shirts. You go to Goodwill and then you screen print them with I like big beats and I cannot lie, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I want that t-shirt, or they want this and they want that. And so you can have your income from just the workshops, but then also have this value added product thing. And so I love too thinking of just Corey and Jess, you kind of have this value added product fermentation piece, and like, where does that position you, and how is that different than having a whole nother slew of products that may not sell well in the same market stand? So that's why we're kind of thinking of all this, is like, can these products go together? We learned early on that we couldn't do farmers markets because we have a fresh flower product, and that has to be in one section of the farmers market, and then our like herbal products have to be sold in a different section of the farmers markets. So for us to be at a farmers markets and want to sell all of the things that we do at a certified one, we found out that like that wasn't something that was, we could have both our fresh flower produce at that same craft section of a farmer's market. So funny things that you learn as you go through the process. So that's why it's nice too to have all the ideas out, so that we're not kind of putting all of our eggs in one basket, and we can adapt and change, especially super early on. Just being like, oh, that's not quite working. I'm hitting all these roadblocks. Let me pivot here and put my energy here, and know that my other idea for a flower subscription is still there, but it's just not right now. Now I'm going to be focusing on this one channel, which brings us into pro and con land. It's talking about all these different channels. As we build in this program, we're going to be looking at who are these kind of like customer avatars, who's the person behind each of these. You say you're going to go to farmers markets. Okay, which farmers markets, say in Cardiff versus the City Heights farmers market, two different clienteles, and like, how do you establish a product at a price that's going to meet that specific clientele? And that requires us like just so much more energy than we could ever really imagine, as establishing one marketing channel. And so as farmers, marketing may not be our number one thing. And so learning how to get really comfortable in one language and then expanding from there. And so, we're going to get into talking some of these pros and cons on how to use the Mira board. If you're new in here, you notice I have a little hand. And if I want to move things around, it's really easy to do that with the hand. I can always use my mouse to zoom in and then out and in different locations, but the hand helps you move around. When you're ready to edit, you can switch over to the cursor here and then actively click and double click it, and zoom in to write a comment. And so we're going to go about this market stream by market stream. And I just like everyone's ideas, and it may be different. So something like, for folks, so we may have it on both sides, where I heard, Sienna, you say like leverage your existing reach and the people coming to your farm. Whereas, Corey and Jess may not want a farm stand because they're tucked way off the road, and, they would rather leverage a partner, to have a farm stand on site because they just don't have that visibility of where they are. So, visibility. Wise. And they would have to do more marketing in order to draw people into their farm stand. I know, like, let's get started. How about we get started with farm stands, farm stands, and kind of talking about like why we would want them or not want them on our farm, what's the benefit and drawbacks to each of those. And I would say, I'm going to add on here too, to finish my thought of visibility, is that one of my farmers, he is literally across the street from an elementary school. And he's like, I want to pop up a farm stand when school gets out and the kids are all going to come out and see, have the farm stand, and the teachers and parents can come by and swing, he's going to grow a lot of strawberries. And so that's a good farm stand seller. So, visibility for nearby schools and attractions. Yeah. On farm stand.
Do you want us saying things or adding it to the board, Kat?
Either if you're really inspired, totally put them in the Miro board, but also wanting to just add to the conversation so that
Okay.
you can hear it too. Yeah.
I think I have one that's like two sides of the coin. Like I just added one that's you have to regularly upkeep the stand.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a really small farm, that's like another thing to think of. Just thinking of Moy Hill, we had that experience where the farmers were just so busy that they'd be like, oh yeah, we have to put things out. But it also is like if it's an honesty kind of stand, then it's kind of low maintenance, which would be a pro, I would think, as well. Because you don't have to have someone like compared to a farmer's market, you don't have to have a staff member sitting there.
I can add to that, Jess, both sides of that coin. For us, like with our market on site, I mean, it's literally like a couple 100 feet away from our farm. So it's super convenient. We can harvest day of or day before and just put it in our fridge, and the staff from the market come and pick it up. So like time wise and like refrigeration and gas and all of that is like not even a factor.
Mm-hmm.
So just I don't know how to summarize that in like a nice word, but I guess proximity and efficiency. And it's so easy for our market to place orders like the day of. It's just a very like you sell what you have basically, which I think would apply to any farm stand. But one of the challenges with that is well, just one challenge we're experiencing is like constantly needing to keep it full and pretty looking, and just realizing how quickly produce like the shelf life diminishes. And it's like devastating every time you walk in and it's been a few hours and your lettuce already looks terrible. And it feels ridiculous because you know the farm is just a few feet away and it should be looking really fresh. But the reality of a market where the doors are open and the refrigeration like doesn't really work as well as it could, or yeah. So the needing a fully stocked farm stand, even if you're not like selling all of those things, just because it needs to look full and pretty.
I think one big advantage that excites me about on-farm stands is all of the programs through CDFA and CalFresh to get the machine to accept SNAP benefits. And so just that, like getting a grant to accept that machine for one, but also just opening the market for folks in the neighborhood of wherever the farm is to be able to use benefits in an easier way than like at the farmer's market, for example. And something that I'm excited about is the consumer education piece of bringing folks right to the place where they're purchasing the food is where the food was grown. I think that's exciting. And then the flip side of that is just liability of having a lot of people on your farm and parking and traffic and how that impacts the neighborhood.
Yeah, I was gonna add like because you put for a pro the like visibility for nearby schools and attractions, but depending on location, you kind of have to create your customer base and make sure you have people that are coming to your farm to shop at your farm stand. Like you need to make sure that you need to have outreach and make sure that you have people that are coming to buy your products if you don't have already visible space.
Rachel, could I just ask really quick, do you have experience setting up EBT payment systems within on farm stand?
Yeah, it's been a while, but I'll send the link. CAF does a really good job. Or, I mean, CAF, maybe you also have a resource that you like, but I'll just put this one in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah. I like worked on the outreach, like case management side of CalFresh for many years, but never like the retail side of it. And I'm trying to get it started here. And so would love any
Nice.
tips.
Yeah.
That is one of my other work plan goals is to work with another farm. Because I was working with Michelle on her EBT program. And so I need another farm to work with. So if you need support on that, I actually need another farm to be working with. And I'm working with a gal right now, Kelsey, and we're trying to create like a little farmer FAQ to like, are you a good fit to be a farm accepting EBT because of just needing to be able to access that community and like doing that outreach and all the extra little hoops that you need to jump through. But there's progress and there's hope. So I think it's a great fit for you all there.
Thank you. Yes, would appreciate any help. I'll follow up with you, Kat, about
Yeah,
that.
and I'm excited for this link too, because CAF does put together some really quality educational documents.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was too. It's a great for access to EBT at your farm stand, but you do have to be present with the machine in order to like swipe and accept those benefits, unless you can set up like an online sales where people can like prepay online and then just pick up their order from the farm stand kind of thing. So
Yeah. Or they can, it works really nicely for CSA because there's already this expectation of consumers to like pay in advance for something. So they could come just like once a month with their card at a time where you're there with the machine and swipe it and pay for like 4 subscriptions. Or you can like work out an honor system situation with like minimal card swipings. But
yeah. But they're working on all that stuff. They're like aware that that's a pain. So there's like a progress, you know. Farm stands. What else do we want to say about farm stands? I love the parking and traffic impacts to the community.
I don't know a lot about this and I'd be curious to like learn more, but do farm stands have to follow some of the like home kitchen rules where like are there certain products like tomato sauce or whatever that you can't sell at a farm stand? Or if you have a commercial kitchen space, can you then bring it back home to your farm stand and sell it there? Or, I don't know, it seems like it might limit, there might be some products that aren't okay to sell on a farm stand, it seems like.
I know, yeah, especially here we are in San Diego County, in California. And so I was looking into some of the value added product stuff. And that's where I know Corey and Jesse have been looking at the Migos, and you've been looking probably a lot more at these regulations. But like for a business to be able to sell value added products, that puts you in this like tough category where you really got to have your like commercial kitchen and like certified and it's done up to T, any kind of like edible product, versus the cottage food laws, which allow you as like an individual or any of your family members, you can make up to $75,000 worth of value added products. So I guess that's a benefit in choosing your business entity type as well. So if you're like, you know, an LLC with multiple employees, it wouldn't work. But if you're just like you and your family, you can use those cottage food laws to sell your value added products. Because this Wild Willow was running into that. So I was looking into that for them recently. That it's like, oh, actually, you're somebody with employees. So that puts you in the, you need to contact the, is it the Food Health Department of Environmental Health or something here, county? Don't quote me on that. I'm a county employee, but it's a confusing for me.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kat.
Yeah.
It's like related to the PFRs, whatever those stand for, is the, like the next level from cottage
Okay.
industries.
Cool. Jess, are you familiar with
processed food registration.
CAF's resources on the value-added products?
I just watched their webinar. It was pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah. And they've got a lot of resource guides and stuff.
Yes, they do. But yeah, the on-farm stand is, oh, maybe I'll put Tuke and like, just so it is here, is like couples well with you have the consumer education, but also just like, couples well with, on-farm workshops, experiences. Because otherwise, yeah, we're in the farm stand side of things. But the value-added products, it's like, put that on too, like, great place to sell VAPs. That are legal, permitted, certified. Do I put under the table? So I think it's a good way to get away with selling value-added products under the table, too, because you're like cultivating a closer community of people versus like trying to sell value-added products at like a farmer's market. It would be more regulated. Yes, I went on the record saying that.
I heard a thing the other day that was giving people recommendations on how to sell between farms and like kind of private clients, individuals. And it's like a agreement, pretty much. You sign a contract that says, this is what I want from your farm in these different ways. Like you're not using pesticides, you're not using herbicides, stuff like that. And I will purchase this and that every few weeks or whatever. And like any farm can do that, or any producer really can do that, as long as you have like a contract. That's one of the biggest things that like we can do in America, is just sign a contract between two people. And it's like, okay, the government can't come like after you for doing that, because it's like your own right to produce your own contracts. So I thought that was really interesting. And it's called like PFA is now confusing me. PFR. It's not that. Yeah. I'll have to look and see what the acronym was for it, but it was really interesting.
Some product liability, something or another.
Yeah, that must be it. We haven't looked into it, but just thought it kind of dovetailed well with what you just
PLC, maybe
said.
product liability contract.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, because there's like interesting information about like, especially when it comes to like raw milk, like that's my background, is like raw milk and goat shares, to try and like find these loopholes. And
that's exactly what we're looking into it.
Oh, look, hi, Jenny. Speaking of a value-added product master, that's Jenny right there. Her elderberry syrup is for sale at the harvest market.
Speaking of value-added products,
yes,
we have a tray of soap and tea. Look how beautiful.
Yay.
Beautiful.
Got the
calendula sunflower.
It's gorgeous.
I'll let you guys go back to your meeting.
Looks so beautiful.
I don't know how to make this fit on a Post-it, or I actually don't even know if it's a pro or a con, but something that I think about, at least in my specific location, doing a stand right here at my place and potential farm is the most appealing, but there's one other like farm stand is like a small rural community, and there's one other farm stand of a family that's been doing this for a really long time, and there's like this, I don't know, sort of awkwardness to me about starting another farm stand in a very small community, because a farmer's market, it's understood that it's a whole bunch of stands that are going to come to like one neutral space, or you sell to a retail store, and it's just understood. But when you bring it to like a community or a neighborhood, it feels like there's a market that is developed here that's been very supportive of like a neighbor here, and then to come and like start a competing but very similar business just feels a little bit more awkward in a way that I wouldn't really feel at the farmers market. And I'm trying to, really think through the ethics of that and the way to approach it collaboratively rather than competitively, and kind of what that feels like.
So what was I trying to, I was going from the coast into Napa, and it was like cherry season. And you get stuck in this traffic, like going up over the mountains, and you see the first one, it's like cherries, get your cherries. And then there's another farm stand like 100 feet away, like cherries, get your cherries. And there's like 4 or 5 cherry farm stands within the same like mile stretch of road, which is, who knows, maybe they're all buying from the same one and like they could be sharing resources or not. That was a fun anecdote. And then you think of Ramona. Actually, if you look at this town of Ramona, they have, I think there might even be somebody that's like mapped all the local farm stands. But Michelle talks about this. She's like, oh no, people got their map and they're like, I can get my discounted eggs here, and then I buy this over here, and they go on their little farm stand routes because there's so many of those. So Ramona is a bigger town where it is, I think it'd be easier to just pop up a farm stand, but you're in a small, very small community. So yeah, chatting with them, and I guess then you just run the risk of when someone's like, hey, no, this is my space, or you see what products they have and, try and manage it that way too. Or on days they're not open. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the farmers market, I mean, already it's a neutral space and this and that, but market managers, at least if they're doing what they say they do, they have product lists and they, give preference to the people that are already there. And if you're a new vendor that wants to come in and you have a whole bunch of mixed veggies, they might say you can bring all your veggies, but you can't bring any mushrooms because we've already committed to 2 mushroom growers. And so they kind of like manage the product mix that way. And so I was curious about just chatting with my neighbor who has the farm stand and seeing what their specialties are, and then just trying to find complementary items and maybe being like, okay, I have a moratorium on cucumbers. I absolutely won't cut into your cucumber market or something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and having those kind of conversations. And then I'm curious, like Jess and Corey too, just this, it's starting to, I think we're kind of wrapping up with this one, and thinking of moving out. I don't know about farmers markets, but I love what you were saying, like this wholesale to small retailers. I think this is like a little avenue of like small business to small business, like business to business marketing that I'm finding is really exciting and fun. And so I kind of want us to like talk a little bit more about these kind of like selling to other like-minded small businesses that would take your product and like rep it for you. Because maybe you never know, Rachel, like they're like, oh yeah, we've been trying to give it up. Can you just like sell our products at your farm stand, or vice versa? Or, I just even think of partnerships. Whoops. What I did there. Like Pishka Farm Stand down the Tijuana River Valley, they've developed partnerships. So they buy produce in from some of the other small farms, and then, they all sell that from their one farm stand kind of thing. So that's an example of, farmers like working together with other farm stands. So it's like the next kind of little step. And I said that to Jess and Corey specifically because you have the Winola Flats market that's going to be opening up down the street, and it's kind of like a farm stand, but like it's become like a business now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, the way I see it, it's helping them as well, like you're saying, because one less product they have to figure out how to source and get delivered, etc. So I think that would be kind of a pro, is like there's probably a lot of farm stands who would be really excited to have like another value-added product that's easy, that they don't have to think about producing to stock, depending on the type of stand, But the con for us that we're finding is like you really do have to be legit if you're going to be selling at store, like it has to be produced more or less in a commercial kitchen, and have like the proper labeling and everything. That would be like the PFR going through the health service.
Yeah. Be legit. So
And then maybe it would be hard to manage getting products there depending on where the retailer is from you.
mhm.
Kind of the opposite to what you said, Sienna, is like it's easy because it's on your property. For the farm stand is like, yeah, you'd have to be maybe running around doing a lot of deliveries, which Kat, I know you've had experience with that.
Yeah, and then also it can be in pretty small uh,
Quantity.
quantities. Smaller,
And something I'm not quite sure about is like, I mean, the markup price is something that we were thinking about, is like we want to keep our stuff like really kind of not too bougie, overpriced, like so it's accessible to people. But then if you're selling wholesale, like they're going to have to mark it up, so they're making money off of it.
And it's usually like it can vary from your fresh produce, like so yeah, these are different than like grocers, small retailers, depending on who you're talking to. Like, you know, they want a grocer may try and upsell you 50% and get a 50% margin because produce, like you're finding Sienna, like it goes bad often. And so there's a lot of waste that happens. So they want a bigger percentage on your produce, but like a value added product, maybe they just want like a 30% margin. And so then, yeah, you're talking about margins and producing a large enough volume so that you can like sell for a smaller price point. I'd say the biggest thing about this is like for us has been the consistency of these small businesses. Like just week after week, they're just always going to keep buying, and then like they get really excited about your product, and so like they're really like marketing your product for you. And so if like especially with like social media these days, it's just like a great way as like a new product too to like get in somewhere and have somebody who has a reach, like us getting into Fox Point with our flowers. And now Fox Point is now we have access to their entire market and everyone's really excited. So it's a good buzz for us to build up like a following, as we don't have a large following. So when I'm thinking of all these markets too, it's like, okay, who is my consumer? You know, how much effort is it going to take for me to like get that consumer base? So Hannah, like hearing you like, oh, CSA, I haven't done that yet. And like, I'm going to put that on the back holder, go to a farmer's market. And that's so smart, right? Because farmer's market, you can get to know people. And then they're going to be like, oh man, I just want to buy from you every week. And then you build your CSA from there once you have like a solid base. Yeah, because it takes, you know, how are people going to find who you are? And so going to someone like a small retailer who's going to be your cheerleader and put your name out there, that's really valuable because like most farmers markets I find aren't great at their online social media marketing always. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like Sage Hill, who's also selling to you at Harvest Market too. I think there's more that can be said, especially if we think of this like farmers working together piece as like a possible scenario to like share that like workload. I'm not having to do the marketing and selling.
Maybe this is getting too big picture and not necessarily in like the world of financial benefits, but in the short term. But I feel like there's something to be said about small businesses and small farms like supporting and rooting for each other, and just by like nature of you selling products from all local farms, it almost demonstrates that you're like not in competition with each other. You're like actually trying to support each other, and um yeah, and just lifting each other up and spreading awareness of like all these farms that exist that we might not visibly see because maybe some are in more rural communities, but like creating that general awareness of, oh, there actually are a lot of farms that are growing and selling things, and I can like, how can I buy more of like that, and where can I access that?
Yeah, I switch it back to the product screen because there's this old model of thinking that we all should be CSA farmers and grow all the different things, but like the research is there is if you are growing a huge diversity of crops, it's like you're probably doing it all, but not really well. Um, and so the power of being like, I'm not going to step on your cukes. I don't want to do cukes anyways, man. Like my squirrels are constantly eating the cucumbers. I'm so excited you figured out how to get cucumbers. I'm going to get to grow. I love basils and, these other things. So I just want to grow these few things and sell those products. And that's where you really got to think of like, okay, well, how much stuff? Like that's why we talk to your SWATs. Like, are you trying to make this a job and like trying to grow things and like make a huge salary and trying to like, where are we going with this? Or are you doing this more for the love of growing? And so just some of those things as we're talking about all this, and kind of like all throwing it into the web of consideration. If that made sense.
Yeah, I think that makes me think of when we were talking about the on-farm stand, then the entire, crop diversity has to come from one location. And that worries me in terms of like resilience, because if there was a natural disaster or even just like a real hard temperature fluctuation, like you don't have any product at your stand and your main marketing channel is out, versus like Food Shed's model or the just business to business, or even just selling to a retailer in general. You've spread out the locations and there's more diversity in crops, so you can have more resilience through like one tragedy. Even when I was talking about Bill the Bulb Baron, the flower farmer, he just had like kind of one crop, 17 acres of this specialty flower, but he was so worried about his rare varieties getting wiped out if there was one severe weather incident on that one location that he would actually lease very small plots of land around other parts of the county in Santa Cruz and Monterey counties to just stockpile like little parts of his bulb collection. And it was really partly for safekeeping of like varietals and stuff. But I even think about for like a business diversity, like if you're trying to run a CSA box and you don't have anything to fill the box with one week versus having 4 farms fill a box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, moving into the era of cooperation.
I would add just on that note, like, I don't know, it just made me think of what could be a pro of like having an on-farm stand is, I mean, it's kind of like the harvest market, Santa, where you are able to sell other people's products for them. Like you become that I don't know, entity that's able to be that like support, and you can provide an outlet for others. So maybe you have like a crazy prolific farm stand and I don't know, you're in a space that there's tons of visibility and there's a bunch of people coming, or are like event focused farm and you have people coming there, then you have the ability to kind of be that selling or like marketing point for others, and you can kind of create a space to create that, like what we're talking about in the community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. know why it's coming up of just like keep thinking. I remember the ecology center, like learning like how much money they make selling. They have a farm stand, but it's like their number two sellers. It's like flowers and berries. And then like that's over half of their income. And then the rest is like veggies. And so when thinking about like product diversity as well, of just like what's going to be generating your revenue, and just being really real with that so that so that you can become a viable business. You know, to what extent you need it to become your income. Where do we want to meander to next? Do we want to talk about farmers markets? Get like a easy one, or is there something else? Someone's like, ooh, let's talk more about these other things. Farmers market. All right. Love judging farmers markets. So here we go. um, I mean, the biggest con in San Diego is like there are few markets that you can like generate enough revenue to like make it worth your while. So there's a lot of farmers markets and they compete with one another. And so it's hard to find that really good one. Like I know our friend Michelle at Black Mountain has been to like 5 or something or 6. And now she's like settled. She's like, oh, she's got her Fallbrook one. Sells a lot of eggs there and some veggies. And now her Point Loma one's really great for selling meat, you know. And so she like found that special blend. But like the Little Italy Wednesday farmers market is like terrible because those are people that are tourists, you know, those aren't necessarily your residents that are living here in San Diego and looking for fresh veggies. So those are a couple points in there actually. Would that be a sentiment resonated with others?
Yeah. I've worked at 20 of the 35 farmers markets in San Diego.
Oh.
So I feel like I have an idea a bit, at least, about some of what sells well. And, you know, Hillcrest and Little Italy are the top profitable markets, but not profitable for fresh produce. And yeah, like you said, like Little Italy is tourists that don't have a kitchen, even if they wanted to cook on vacation. So, but it does like really well. I sold mushroom tinctures there and did great because they were like the right package to be approved by TSA and that kind of thing. But I'm glad, like you mentioned, the Fallbrook market, because I think the advantage to being in such a large county and having 35 different markets is that you can, if you're really committed to this market channel, find the right market for your business. But yeah, I think it takes the question of like, is farmers market right for your business in the first place? Not like, is there a right market for me, but like, are selling at markets, does that even make sense? And I think it's not always yes. One thing I think of is just staff. Like it's almost impossible to, I think, do markets and do all of the production and packaging and delivering and everything that comes along without like hiring market staff. And I think a business has to be like a certain size to even be able to hire a staff person for a stand. But maybe on the pro list is, like you mentioned earlier, Kat, using a market as a temporary means of marketing. So like advertising your CSA, committing to one season at a farmer's market, really advertising any agritourism, CSA, building rapport, like meeting everybody, and then giving up the market, but you maintain those relationships.
Yeah, I know Andy with Grow Eco, he does this like every other Saturday, pops up at the brew spot, and like people actually really have come to it. It's super micro, not even an official farmers market, and people have gotten to know him, and now he's just like, that's where he lives, that's where he wants to sell, and he just keeps getting new CSA customers, and like it just makes a lot of sense for him to do that. And he's also a superhuman and can do all the things. So
Or like Saigon Coffee in North Park. They started as a farmers market stand for a long time. And from the beginning, they were like, we want a brick and mortar coffee shop. And so for like years at the farmers market, they would sell out a coffee within 2 hours. And you're forced to stay at the market. You can't just like close up your stand and leave. So it was like really interesting watching Vin just sit at Hillcrest for a couple of hours without any more product. But what he was doing over and over was greeting every customer that came and was disappointed there wasn't coffee by saying like, I'm trying to start a business. Like, here's my crowdsourced fundraising campaign. Or finally, when he got the location, he's like, this is where the business is going to be. Here's when the grand opening is. And then like eventually, started a very successful like in-person coffee shop. But like he kind of knew for like years ahead of time that he was just using the farmers market for that.
That's such a beautiful story.
Yeah, it's cool.
It could also be a bit costly because you might have to be sizable enough to have staff, but then you have to pay those staff to be present, and you have to pay a fee at the market. And those vary by market, but yeah, it can be not a lot of bang for your buck, I guess, depending on the market, like what you spoke to, Rachel.
Oh, and they're highly regulated. They're pretty regulated places too. Like you need your certified producers permit to do that, and that's like $300 to just get that going, and then that's inspection fees to get out to your property, and yeah. Unless you sell, what was it? Cuts of meat. That's what somebody was saying, that nobody ever, people are checking in on their like eggs and all this and that and your veggies, but then there's no one coming out to inspect your like meat. And if like, oh, is your meat properly, listed for at the proper places? And so I found that interesting as well. But, there's no regulatory people coming to farmers markets for meat. I don't know. Is that true, Rachel? Or
important thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never sold meat at a market. I do know that several of even the really busy markets that have wait lists are like looking for meat and seafood vendors. They would like put them to the top of the list. Like it's something I guess a lot of consumers are asking for at the market is like protein stands. But not eggs. I think they're full up on eggs.
Eggs and like, what's interesting too is looking, we were looking to do farmers markets originally because that was our plan. Farmers markets, build up, get a subscription, build these direct consumer relationships. But like the smaller markets have like one flour vendor, and said Hernandez Brothers, and they just like, yep, they do all these markets. They're at every single one, and there's no room for a local small grower and at all, which is interesting. But then we were trying to work with Little Italy farmers market managers. They were starting the Chula Vista one, and they were like, oh my gosh, women owned, local, like we want you to be the first one in this market. And so I do think some market managers would prefer some like local flowers, but I guess if you're an established market, how do you kick out your large wholesale vendor? Just okay, now, then you talk about all those big produce distributors, and they're bringing in food from really far away. And, you really got to find that right market manager. They're trying to manage it too, because if they can't get enough farms selling produce, they want to bring in that distributor. But at some point, you kick out your big distributor who's been your reliable one versus the small farms, which are maybe not going to have the consistency and diversity.
Yeah, I would say that's a con, even though I think maybe part of the fallacy is that it's a pro, but like controlling your narrative and being able to tell your business's story, you think at a farmer's market you could really do that. And maybe you can on a one-on-one relationship to relationship level, but I think a lot of the ethics of a farmer's market are determined by the market manager, like whether they're going to let those wholesalers in and how transparent they're going to be about different sourcing. And so I don't know, depending on how important that is to you about your business, like you might be misrepresented by selling at a certain market. And in my experience, like that can be really frustrating and can kind of like lead to burnout or just take away some of the joy of why we might be doing what we're doing versus the farm stand or a smaller retail. Maybe you can partner with someone who's more in alignment with your narrative.
Right. That's why that like business to business stuff. Yeah. Yeah, but if you can find your really good farmers market, like I think there's a space for it too, you know. Um, it's the really I just loved visiting the Point Loma market, hearing Michelle's stories about the just these like little tiny neighborhood community markets, and if you have the right product spread, you can be really successful. So
Hamul just started a market on Saturdays, and I haven't been yet. I don't know if anyone else has, but I'm curious because it seems like in the outreach I've seen them do, they are looking for producers that really are like in East County or just like a diversity of product. It's never going to be a very big market. So I think it's really just like finding their one flower producer and their one veggie producer in that. But if anyone knows anyone in that area that's looking for a market, I think that might be worth checking out.
Where is it?
It's in Hamul. I think it's on just the 94 East, like as you go through town. It's on Saturday mornings.
I feel like there's just more and more of a movement into our like leaning into our communities and like where we are, and in the city it's a little scrambled, but when you go into the outer communities, yeah, it sounds really precious. It's like, yeah, you want to support your neighbors. I feel like that's the general theme, is we want to support one another. So okay, this is so fun for me. I do we want to do restaurants is pretty good, but on farm workshops is also kind of a big one that I know a lot of us are talking about, getting people on the farm. And so I think we should touch on that. I was going to do that. Yeah. And again, as Sienna, you pointed out too, it's like our farm becomes a product. And so it's like that's almost what we're selling. And you know, and then it couples with like on farm store, but like they're really different, like these workshops and agritourism, farm dinners, classes. They are, you know, it's supplementary towards having a farm. It's like you need a farm kind of to like tell the story. Yeah, you can't just pop up in a vacant lot. I mean, you could, but you never know.
And a farm with like nice entertaining space, because there's a little bit of a difference between like a full-on working farm, right? And then one that could host people.
Yeah, this one's going to be interesting, right? Of talking of like, it's like a pros versus cons, like maintaining your working farm that's not safe for people to walk around. But like some farmers are like, I don't want to have to do that. Whereas I'm like, oh no, I love having an excuse to like finally mow the edges so that when people are coming to the farm. So I don't know, what would you say? Is that pro or con, having to maintain the aesthetic of your farm?
Maybe it's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
both.
think it goes on
It
both
can
sides.
take a lot of, you know, like that's more work required of you also to make sure it's really neat and pretty versus like if you didn't have people coming, maybe like you didn't need to weed that thing over there, and you know, like you don't need to trim, and you could leave it a little bit more wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely both because we've like our farm crew has had to play the landscaper and the fix it and the whatever other roles that sometimes feel like way less important than caring for our actual veggie products. But then if mulching the hillside and cleaning up these weeds and this compost pile are like going to make the space more attractive for people, then that eventually is bringing us more income. So it's like both together, even though the taking the time and like paying the labor costs to do those extra like maintenance tasks can be tough to justify in the moment sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the like safety thing and this might be more specific to us, but I think it could be for any farm. Like when you have people on the space, then it can't just be a free-for-all because you need to protect your vegetables from like if people bring their pets, so you don't want the pets using the bathroom in your farm, or you don't want kids running wild and like picking vegetables or stepping on the beds. And so then it requires more like time of you or someone on the crew to like watch and maintain and kind of regulate the space. But you also want it to be like open and accessible for the community as well, and not just like a closed fence environment all the time. So like that dance as well between
I mean, like really touching on that piece though, that I think touches so many of all of our hearts here is like having a space where the community can connect with the farm is like really important at like as like a, I don't know if it's like our own personal, almost since all of us are here kind of thinking of some version of that, you know, it's like, is that like a greater calling, you know, that we're being asked to do as farmers? Like it's almost like a service that needs to happen.
Yeah, our world, like we need more people with their hands in the dirt. Our world will be better when that happens.
And I think going and seeing the farm, there's so much to be said for that because I mean, I grew up going to farmers markets, not until I like actually started going to farms and volunteering and being just around farmers did it really kind of click all of the effort and the work that it takes to produce fresh food and then distribute it. Like it's really helpful for people to see that.
Yeah, I think there's a good balance. Like I definitely think it's can be really rewarding to have folks on your farm and also can be a lot of work. I like how some CSA farms sell CSA shares by having one benefit that CSA shareholders can come to like one on-farm party, like usually in the summer, there'll be like a summer party just for CSA members. And I like that because it feels like the farmer's time is still valued because it was, I don't know, it was a benefit given to people that chose to support the farm throughout the year through the lean times and the bountiful times. And so it's one celebratory party. So that seems like one way to just designate like one day a year where you're able to offer that to the community. I think there's other ways, like since I work for an RCD now, a resource conservation district, I think it's cool when we're able to do demonstration projects or field days on a farm and give the farmer a stipend, which I think is really crucial.
That's so
So like from both sides, I think for nonprofits to always offer that like honorarium or stipend and for farmers to advocate for it. And then you're still getting the benefit of opening up your farm and using it for community and education and connection, but you also are acknowledging that you're taking a day off work to do that, you know.
I think another pro that I would add is that like the farm itself becomes like you get to create a space for people to experience the feeling of community. I think like there's a lot of people who don't have that in their life and they're looking for that whether they know it or not, and the farm then gets to become that thing, and it's like I mean, kind of what you're speaking to before, Kat, of like why it's so important. I feel like it's like it touches people, like it touches their hearts. You know, it's like you can talk to their minds all day long about like why it's important to support local and what it means, but then when they get to actually experience that, it's like they get to become a part of something, and then they're in with you in this whole game in a way. So I think I think that like part of bringing people to the farm, I think is like a game changer. I think it's like I think it's so big.
Yeah, and like literally raising more farmers every time there are kids that come to the farm. I mean, there was like one girl who was, I don't know, maybe 10 or younger, and she was like, I want to be a farmer one day. And I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I didn't, that felt so out of my like world when I was younger, like the thought of being a farmer. And I grew up in a family that like had a garden and we grew the random veggie and we camped and like we were outdoors, and I still felt like farming was so far removed from my life. And so to like change that narrative, um and yeah, showcase farming.
I think since we all have kind of already identified that we care about community and like space creation, I think something that's really beautiful about thinking of farms as public spaces is also that there are so few places in our world where lots and lots of just incredibly different people could find common ground, no pun intended, but just like something that they have in common of eating food. And I think the times that farms like Solidarity Farm, I think, is a great example, but holding a space where policymakers can come and children and all kinds of just very, very diverse people and have a conversation and maybe share a meal or share a task in the field. I think that there are so few places like that that's something that really stands out about on farm experiences and how agritourism can kind of surpass just capitalism and a money making thing, but really yeah, social change.
That brings to mind, I know there is a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of governmental policies and programs trying to line up to support agritourism in California specifically. I know there's like a bill, you know, I don't know how long it may take to go through all the process, but to like make on-farm liability, like have it just be like a state-run program, and that farms can just be like enroll with the state and like they're covered, just to help promote and take away that barrier, because you know on-farm liability is that's a real cost. It's like $1,500 a year for me to like let people on my farm and also sell products too, so it covers lots of stuff, but liability piece. And then also just there's trainings happening. I see more and more trainings happening. So I think, you know, there's possible funding sources.
Would we categorize U-Picks under this
Yep.
like on-farm experience? Because we've been looking at that as well, and I think it feels appealing because people are pulling their own food directly from the ground and you're charging them for an experience. So they're like paying more than they would for that bundle of turnips or whatever it is in, you know, so like in an hour of time, you're making X number more than you would if you were just like selling those veggies, let's say, directly in the market. And then you have the added benefit of like bringing the community into the space.
And paid labor. They're paying you.
Reverse paid labor.
I don't know if it would like be necessarily a con, but just like we're talking about creating space for people and having people on, but you need to also make sure that you have actual space. Like you need to dedicate space and make sure you have space for people to come to enjoy, to, you know, be in a workshop, to sit down, like all of that, and make sure that they're comfortable. So like, you know, you guys added like extended shade cloths for workshops, and you need to like actually put into the space that you have to host people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bathrooms. Good point.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
and then
it's-
the parking.
Yeah,
Parking.
parking. Your bathrooms comment just reminded me, I'm sure if David was on this call, he'd bring up that he just like built a compost toilet at the Cardiff tiny farm. But it's like a real thing because otherwise people have to go in the like in the house where other people are living. So
Yeah, that was why he wasn't on the last call. He was like, "Sorry, I'm building this composting toilet for my farm dinner." And yeah, and one day we're gonna get David on these calls because I really just hearing about the Cardiff Tiny Farm and um, him just kind of really grappling again with this concept of okay, community is what's important. That's his like end game. He wants to build community. He's not necessarily in it to like make a $60,000 salary. Oh, that would be nice. Maybe we can get that. But there's the reality of this, what that space. When you said space, Hannah, too, I was just like, oh yeah, you need land and like zoning and landowner permissions because that's not always a thing too with the space that you're in. If the neighbors are cool with that, or you're so what was that really cool farm in like Del Mar? Gosh, what was that named? Del Mar, like La Jolla area? Sea something, Sea Breeze. There, maybe they closed recently, like a couple 3 years ago, maybe, because the neighbors just kept complaining because they were having CSA customers and classes, and they're like, no, we don't want this in our neighborhood. And David had to deal with parking and people parking in front of the neighbors that were like, well, I got to wake up every day on, people complaining. Yeah. So that's a thing. Neighbors.
this has been I don't know if it's technically a con, but it's been a challenge for us, and maybe it would just fall under like rule following or just like legality. And I've mentioned it to you, Kat and Hannah, before, but people want to come and volunteer. People want to put their hands in the dirt, but when you're a for-profit, you can't have volunteers. And so we're like, what is the alternative of a free and accessible, like come and help out and learn, but like getting around the legality of that. Like we're obviously not trying to work people to the bone and like shortchange the labor laws. We love labor laws. But it feels like the like alternative is to charge a fee and have it be more of like an educational workshop, which is great. And we're thinking about doing just like a $1 workshop. But when price is like a barrier for people. So yeah, just getting around legality.
Right. Yeah.
Penny to
Sienna, I'm wondering how you're balancing like the actual value of the farm team's time though, when you're not charging for that,
Yeah, it's a great question. Before this, I was like writing scripts for our events, and we haven't done one of those yet, but we have our first one planned for this Friday. And we need other forms of income for sure. But it feels like there's a demand just for people to be on the farm, and I think there's also a desire like in us to offer something that's like more financially accessible, because everything else we do does or will have more of a ticket, a fee, so we've been doing tours for months, and we started off free and then they were $10 and now they're 20. And we'll be doing U-Picks, which will probably be like $30, like harvest your own CSA box, and other workshops. So I guess in my mind, I'm justifying it because I see us having this like menu of items and then people can choose what they can afford, but it feels like having something that's more financially accessible feels important for now. And I guess also because we're still relatively new, just getting people out onto the farm and then hoping they'll, you know, like buy a coffee or buy some other things while they're here as well, which maybe doesn't support the farm directly, but like supports the greater Fox Point businesses. Yeah.
Something Wild Willow has done, and I think maybe some other farms, is take advantage of the, you know, when big companies do like a corporate volunteer day or like a team building day for their staff, like October 14th, Indigenous Peoples Day is coming up, and some places just give it as a paid holiday, but other places have like an optional employees will like volunteer together at whatever mission they want to. And recently, like Wild Willow had a big company come out, and it's like 40 volunteers that you don't have to worry about the legality of having them volunteer on the farm. There's like a little bit of a contract. Sometimes the company even will like pay the farm some donation or something. But that could be like one way to get one-off bits of labor on the farm.
Yeah, I kind of want to speak to maybe to what you're referring to, Sienna. It's like, especially I know Greg and you worked with me during like the COVID. Oh, Jess and Corey, you know, it's just like during that COVID time, just like Greg and I are both like so community oriented about like we want the people, like it's so much about having the people come and have that connection, and what is that access point for people to come volunteer and creating that community of people. And that's where, you know, Hannah's at Farm Lab and it's a nonprofit, and so that's easier to do. But then it's its own thing too, where it's not always necessarily getting work done. You just got to balance it. Huh?
Yeah, sometimes it's more helpful and sometimes it's less helpful, but the like sentiment is still there where it like most people it makes a big impact. And that is valuable.
Yeah.
Like that's valuable to me. And that reminds me of like a lot of the why behind why I do that. And that gives me more behind like, okay, I can keep doing my day because like that just gave me more energy because I love how much that impacted that person, even if I didn't get as much done or, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like so different where you like nonprofits like need volunteers to keep the like quote business running versus when you don't need volunteers, it's sometimes a drain on your time and energy and resources to have people on because you're like, actually, I could do this a lot more efficiently alone. So that it's like a different purpose of like bringing people in.
You know, too, it's the especially for it's so lonely. It can be so lonely on a farm. And like having one person come and visit, and like even if it's for 15 minutes, is so uplifting. Or somebody, even if I am slower, just to have be seen in the work. Like it can be farming can be isolating, and so having agritourism, yeah, maybe work, but not to be isolated. A way to not be isolated. Hmm. And I still just like dream too about the day that there's like a broader organization. And I think some folks are talking about it, but not necessarily in a real sense, but that like organizing, like there's a nonprofit and they get all the people together. And if Sienna, you wanted to have volunteers, they're actually volunteering for Botanical Community Development Initiative. And then BCDI works with you as a farm to be like, oh yeah, you're our like farm volunteer visit site, and our volunteers are all going through you know, this mechanism and you're one of our like designated volunteer sites because you have X, Y, and Z on site bathrooms and safety protocols and, you know, a training concept so that it's not necessarily, you're just, man, but some people just want to harvest carrots every week. Wash lettuce, as Hannah knows. You got your
Well, then we'll send them to Farm Lab.
too. Yeah, you know, that's interesting. That, and then you have a network too where it's like, okay, you know, you can place people appropriately. That's my dream. But everyone wants to make it part of their farm business.
That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
I'm talking with other folks too. Oh my gosh, it's 7, friends. Holy smokes. It's some good conversations. We didn't talk about CSA or restaurants and grocers. Nobody was interested in grocers or online direct sales. But this is your homework, is to take this. You have the link. I'm like, I'll probably send it in 2 formats, one in the Miro board and one as like a PDF. So that way you can like take this and finish it out. Or if you've been writing it down, your homework is just like finish this pros and cons list. And next week we're going to do our quick instinctual matrix for you to think about it. And because as you're doing, I'm also including this little template if this is helpful.
Yes.
Oh, it is? Okay, cool. It didn't feel helpful at first, but yeah, I'll include this in our class resources. You can like list all your products and then kind of check off where they would be going, just as another tool for you to just think about things differently and put it on paper. Such power to like put it on paper and get it out of the brain, because our brain can be the tunnel vision with the blinders rosy colored. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It's going to be so great. Or it's going to be so horrible. I'm never even going to do it. Why even bother? You know, levels the playing field.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So if you send us the link for the Miro app, then, or I guess you said you would send us a PDF also, because like we can't separately edit. Like we would all be editing the same thing, right? Can we?
Yes.
Then if you send it as a PDF, then we can do it ourselves.
Yeah. You can also make a copy of this Miro board, and then it's attached. Miro is attached with Google, so if you have a Google account, you can have like a free personal level. Make a copy. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Or yeah, PDF printed. So. But yeah, if you want to just like add your ideas onto the group board too, I don't think that hurts at all either. So if you're inspired to keep adding onto here, I think that benefits everybody too. But either way, whatever's works for you, that's what it's here for. That's that. So yeah, we're meeting in another week, in 1 week. So wanting to keep this fresh in your minds and keep you motivated to keep moving along. And also was organizing things so that we wouldn't meet on election day night. And just, you know, we can have office hours, but no class on election day.
So the next class like this, Kat, is 1 week from now, not 2 weeks
Yes,
from now?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. But then there'll be more office hours for that empty week, and we can chat about stuff. Because then we'll be switching into getting to know our customers a little bit more, and that'll kind of wrap up this marketing conversation, and then we'll switch into our harvest calendar. So we're really thinking about like, oh, when am I going to have these different products on site? You know, maybe I'm going to be wanting to teach workshops during a certain season. I actually just found this little resource and I was like, oh, you know, this is a cool way to get into like a harvest calendar for your tasks as well. I mean, there's the concept of like, when is your product available for sale, but then also like, when is my work, you know? So if you have like an orchard and you're pruning heavy, like, and you're super busy here and harvest is here, maybe you don't want to be adding workshops at this time, or maybe you do because you want to teach people pruning, you know, and that's when it happens. So that moves into the harvest calendar, and then we're going to talk about enterprise budgets and numbers, valuing our time, and what are we pricing our things at, and then creating a crop plan and talking about labor. So it all ladders up, but yeah, bits and pieces. So I'm sure we'll see new faces as we go on through the course too. when those come up. Any lingering questions? Thank you all so much for being here and contributing so actively to this conversation.
It was nice to see you all. I gotta take off.
Okay,
See you
bye,
later.
Rachel.
Rachel. Thanks.
Bye,
Good to see
Rachel.
everyone.
Good to see you guys.
All right, bye, everyone.
Night.
Pat, this was so helpful. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this was amazing.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I know. As you just started sharing, Sienna, I was like, oh, yep, this is exactly what you need right at this exact moment. Because it's, yeah.
I've been so desperately craving, like every day I'm thinking of questions that I just want or need to ask other farmers and farms. And I like notoriously sign up for online classes and just don't attend, but I knew I needed to come to yours because I so like value your experience and knowledge. And I was like, oh my God, this is like a free therapy office hours like class, like Kat's knowledge. I'm like getting it. And yeah, sometimes it feels hard to justify like sitting down and writing things out, even though I know like I love doing that and I know it works for me, but I haven't been very good about doing it in this job. And so thank you for just like, yeah, so beautifully facilitating that and taking notes for us and everything.
Well, thanks for saying so. Yeah. Yeah, and just noting too, the office hours are also a really good chance to like chat more. So yeah, I got to go. Rachel showed up last week. We got to go real in depth, and so just these small groups, we're going to kind of get to know each other and good spaces to share more.
I would love to. Yeah.
I know it's at a weird time, but like it's kind of in that. I don't know. It's hard to figure out a time to put this class because how do you value your admin time as opposed to your on-farm time or your other jobs? And yeah, it's a hard one.
This is actually a good time because at least for me, we try and finish by 5. So having this at 5:30 is like good motivation for me to like stop other farm work. And then I feel like ending by 7, it's not too late. Like I can go make dinner still. Yeah.
Late dinner person.
Yeah.
Hannah, was there something you wanted to share and stick around for?
No, I'm just listening to you guys chat.
Okay.
I can go.
Oh yeah, no pressure. I was just like, oh, if you had something to talk about too.
No, I just think it was great. Yeah. I like feel like there's like I don't know, there's just so much value that you're providing in this. Truly. Like
Did
there's
your perspective shift at all? You said that you had kind of already done some of this. Was there anything new that kind of showed up that made you be like, huh, maybe?
I think like yeah, I think definitely. I mean, I also know, I mean, I'm going into this like I haven't officially started yet. So I know that everything that I've mapped out could completely change. Like none of my plan might happen at all. So I just feel like this is so valuable to also hear more people's like personal experiences and what their like thoughts are in relation to all of these different things. But I also just love the conversations of talking about like that like kind of farmer to farmer supportive sales. I hadn't thought about that as much. So that's like something I noted down of just like, oh yeah, like keep your eye on this type of thing. But yeah, so I think in a lot of ways, yes. And I think also I feel like I really agreed with a lot of what people were sharing and reflecting on as well. So
build your confidence up. You're like, yeah, I do know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Like that's exactly what I was feeling. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hannah, I have so many questions for you. I'm so excited to connect soon and
yeah, we have a lot to catch up on.
Hear your update.
I was saying, I just texted David for another germination chamber.
Oh,
I was just thinking about that. Feels like we're due.
That'd be great.
Let's schedule it.
Pat, just really quick about the like mentorship for EBT.
Oh yes,
through your county job.
I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Bye, Hannah.
Bye, Hannah.
How does that work? Like, do we apply